lunchbox. Let's try this again. We tidy the roof and you jump off and sail like a Spitfire, passing right over the arch nemesis, the fours. You then swing up to the stage and knock out the pin. And when that's gone, the stage is trashed and we go smoke a bowl. You got it? Now get your fat ass up there. And dude, don't forget your helmet, Snoogans.
Good evening. Welcome to this week's edition of the WayBack Movies Podcast, a show where we review the best and not so best of 80s and 90s cinema, because really, fuck the 2000s. My name is Steve, and with me on this crazy journey,
Justin.
Doctor.
Doctor.
So here we are again.
Yes, sir.
On this crazy journey that we call movie.
Yes.
Try that? I don't know.
Episode 7.
Yes.
We are now going to be entering into the 90s for the month.
Yes.
And we had to make a switch. Like I said last week, we had to make it was a group decision.
Yes, yes. We went with the committee.
To commemorate? Is that the term? Is that the word?
I guess. Honor
the
man that is the legend, Stan Lee, who passed away last week. Still rough. I mean, it's a little bit difficult for me. I kind of can't get away from it. I do work in a comic book store, so everybody wants to talk about it, which is cool, but at the same time, you know, any moment you're just like, oh, Stan, you know, you forget that, like, oh, Stan's not around, then somebody brings it up, and you're just like, oh, yeah, fuck.
But we did say last week we were not going to focus on it because we wanted to give it more time.
Yes.
Which we will do before we get to this week's film. So, memories of Stan Lee.
Well, I mean, of course, my first memories, of course, was just reading comics, because I was a huge fan of comics as a kid, and I wasn't as jaded as I am now, where I'm basically, you know, I will happily wave the flag of fuck Marvel with the comics. Because, you know, it's a thing as of late, Marvel Comics, and most people agree, Marvel Comics as just comics themselves, not really all that good as of late. But back when I was a kid,
little Steve.
back little old me, didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Didn't care what company printed what, I just wanted to read comics, and I was a huge Spider-Man fan, and of course I have Stan Lee to thank for that, because, you know, he created Spider-Man and a ton of other characters, and, you know, I did manage to get a bunch of old comics, and I did get to read Stan's work when I was a kid, and I really enjoyed it, and it's weird how it held up. That was the thing I noticed the most, because I've read a lot of Batman and Superman from the 60s and whatnot, and I gotta tell you, they're pretty terrible. They've got a weird tone to them that's just very kind of dopey. But Stan his work, especially with, like, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, the X-Men, which were the ones that I've read the most, they hold up. You could show them to a kid today, and they totally work. I mean, most kids today would probably be like, why doesn't he use a cell phone? But other than that, the tone, the style, the feel of it absolutely works. And just all of all the stuff that he created is just really cool, and it was really, really well done. So it was just kind of a difficult time for me when he passed, because I remember, like, hearing that voice too, right? Like, I watched, like, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and he was the narrator on the show, and, you know, his voice was always the voice telling me, like, oh, here's, you know, Spider-Man's going to go do this, which is exactly what he did in the comics. So it was kind of a nice little full circle thing, and I just loved his work. I think he was a fantastic writer. I respect him as a human being, because I don't know if you know about him and his wife. This is the coolest story ever, if you kind of believe in true love. They met one day, and he just sort of asked her name, and she said, I'm Joan, and he said, I'm Stan, hi. And pretty much from that moment forward, they were inseparable. They got married 2 weeks later. She got a rush divorce from her husband that she was with because she was already on the outs anyway. And they got married when she was 25, he was 24, and they were married until she passed away at the age of 95.
Yeah.
And he was 94.
And that was, I want to say 6 months? Was it this year?
No, it was 2017.
Was it last year?
Yeah, it was last year. I mean, it was hard to say, but it was I believe it was very true. As soon as she passed away, I literally said,
that's when he started to...
I basically said, Stan's not long for this world. It's just one of those things where, like, I just don't think he would want to be around without her kind of thing. And it really seemed that way, because that was literally when, you know, we started getting reports that his health was in, you know, dire straits and whatnot. But I don't really want to focus on that, but I just thought that was a nice little tidbit. She was the one who convinced him to write Fantastic Four, because basically he was writing all the stuff for Timely Comics, and they were just kind of, you know, dicking him around a little bit, and he was about to leave comics and go to do something else, and she said, well, you know what, you give them so many things for them, write one for yourself, and at least that way you can say you've done it, and you can move on happily. And he wrote the Fantastic Four, and it became one of the top sellers in comics. So, and beloved characters to this day. The other thing I want to say about Stan, because of how, you know, I just threw myself in there for being the jaded DC guy. Stan also worked for DC as well, which most people don't remember. Mm-hmm. He did this fantastic series, and I do say fantastic because I own them on trade paperback, which I assume will be back in print yesterday. Just imagine Stan Lee created the DC universe. And it's all of the characters you know and love from DC, and Stan wrote it as if he created the characters. So, as you can imagine, when you see Batman, you see a dude that looks like a bat. And, you know, Superman kind of looks more like an alien, and the Green Lantern and stuff like that. Fantastic little stories, as if Stan in the 60s created the DC universe. So, I absolutely love them. If you can find them, go pick them up, because they're awesome and they're amazing, and I just love the man's work, and just listening to his that voice alone is one of those things that's just
Spider Friends.
Yeah, exactly. You know, Spider Friend and Excelsior and, you know, True Believer and all that. Just, I mean, I'm not being very articulate right now because, frankly, I don't want to cry.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say other than I loved the man's work, and I loved listening to the man, and he is a part of my childhood, my life, and that's kind of, that's why it's one of the, that's one of the most difficult things, if anything, to talk about.
Because I wasn't more comic reader, but I did appreciate his work in other venues, as in, like, television and all that. Like, the characters he created when they were, you know, your X-Men cartoons in the 90s, your Spider-Man cartoons in the 90s. Even the old 60s one would replay on, like, Family Channel, and I would watch that as a kid, too. That's where I came to appreciate his characters and his work, though not directly, because it wasn't his words. He put these characters and brought them to life.
Very much so.
Now look at them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm glad that whatever issues he had with Marvel were squashed.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, they weren't even necessarily issues, because Marvel didn't fight. Because what mostly happened was he kind of went off, and they kind of started making a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
And once these movies started hitting, so he sued them. Said, hey, I created all these characters you're making a shit ton of money on. I deserve some money. And Marvel, to their credit, I mean, they fought a little bit, but most of the time they're just like, yeah, all right, here you go. And they broke Stan off quite a bit of money, so he was fairly comfortable going forward.
Watching all these movies, and then you'd always wait for that Stan cameo.
That's going to be rough.
Yeah, the Avengers 4 is going to be rough.
Yep.
It's going to get a cheer, though.
Oh, God, yeah.
So, yeah, I've appreciated his work more as from a creator standpoint. Just to, like, I created these characters, and now you get to enjoy them in other venues. But, yeah, I can't possibly imagine there's someone on this earth that has something bad to say about Stan Lee.
I can't think of a single human being. Fuck you, Bill Maher.
Yeah, well.
I'm not going to talk about that. Do your own research if you want. But generally, yeah, no one's got a negative thing to say about Stan, because Stan, as I'm hearing about lately as well, Stan loved being famous, which I thought is adorable, because he tried really hard to be famous, and he tried to be Stan Lee. Like, that's the thing. I mean, in all fairness, Stanley Lieberman, Stan Lee is a great name. And, I kept hearing from a lot of stories like Kevin Smith and whatnot of just being like, he just loved that character so much, and he loved the fans so much that even when his wife did pass away, like a couple days later, he threw on the Stan Lee sweater and just went out there and just like, hello, Spider friends, like, just, being Stan, because that's how he healed himself, so.
So God bless Stan the Man Lee.
Really.
Thankfully, he's somewhere with Joan again.
Mm-hmm.
So we can all take solace in that.
Yes.
So this week, we made the change because of Stan the Man.
Yes.
So we are doing a movie where he made his theatrical debut.
Yes.
And it also coincides with one of our favorite directors of all time.
Yeah. So,
which helps.
Hey, that helps.
Which helps.
So it definitely means we're going to have a lot to talk about in this goddamn movie. So I say we should just sort of jump in and just get to it, because, oh my God, are we going to be talking about this. So let's jump in the Wayback Machine to October 20th of 1995 for a little film called Mallrats. Well, that ended abruptly.
Sun stopped.
Yeah.
What happens when you don't have to go way, way back?
Yeah. That's a little bit rough. Okay, that hurt. Moving on. So here we are. It's mid-90s. Lots of alternative rock everywhere.
Yeah. Plaid everywhere.
Yeah. Especially for the soundtrack of this album.
As far as the eye can
Or this
see.
movie, I should say. That's how I found out about this movie, actually. Is the soundtrack. I was a fan of a lot of the bands on this soundtrack, because there was Weezer and Silverchair and Elastica and Sublime. So I just decided, and Bush as well. So I decided, screw it, I'm going to pick up this album because it's got a whole bunch of bands I like. It might be a good album, and it turns out it really was. But one of the things I loved about it is that it has something that is lost this day and age, does not exist anymore, where it had little clips from the film. Just little snippets of dialogue, and if you know Kevin Smith's work, dialogue's a thing. And I was fascinated by the dialogue in the thing, because it's kind of ridiculous. So, with that being said, now that we know how I discovered this movie, because I knew about it for a year before I actually saw the damn thing. So Mallrats is written and directed by Mr. Kevin Smith, produced by Scott Mosier, production company Alphaville and View Askew, distributed by Universal Pictures, a budget of $6.1 million, a box office of $2.1 million.
Yay!
But to its credit, I'm fairly
DVD
certain
sales
on video and DVD this movie has made millions upon millions, because they keep re-releasing it. Because it found its audience, much like Kevin's first film, it found its audience on VHS, and then eventually DVD, and then eventually Blu-ray.
Kev Smith's career
is found, literally...
You can find his career on DVD.
The fact that he made his biography and he called it Tough Shit, he really should have called it Found on VHS.
Yeah.
He really should have. Because that would have worked, I think. But anyway, that being said, the cast is Jeremy London is T.S. Quint, Jason Lee as Brody Bruce, Shannon Doherty as Renee Mosier, Claire Forlani as Brandy Svenning, Michael Rooker as Jared Svenning, Ben Affleck as Shannon Hamilton, Jason Mewes as Jay, Joey Lauren Adams as Gwen Turner, Renee Humphrey as Trisha Jones, Ethan Suplee as Willem Black, and Stan Lee as himself. So, those are all the guilty parties involved. Let's talk about how this film got made, or more so, fucked up, if you will. So Universal basically came to Kevin right after Clerks had sold to Miramax and was just like, hey, we want to make a movie with you. And Kevin's like, I'm sorry, you what now? I'm the guy who made Clerks, right? So They